Hi there, my name is Chloe and today I'll be working with my group members, Heat and Hu, for our Trust in Nature group presentation. I'll be taking you through the introduction, a little bit about the company and also the business model. So let's get started. To introduce this company and more so the assessment that we're doing, it's just going through a business model and what is a business model. Also, why businesses have innovative models. We'll go through an analysis based on the key responsibilities and what they are, especially for a company like Trust of Nature, and we'll discuss the challenges that they face in this company. Because they are an innovative company, they will face a lot of challenges, especially from modern day competitors. So I guess it would be other companies who are doing, fundraising, work for the environment, even though they should be working together. There is always that company that would want to be on top. Obviously, Trust by Nature own a lot of land, so they do have quite a competitive edge. But from those issues and challenges, we'll then give suggestions about what they can do as the company to be more successful in their outcome. So we'll start off by talking about why Trust in Nature. So Trust in Nature protects native plants and also wildlife in Victoria. And this is also by conserving habitats on private land. Now, this has a very positive influence on the environment and widely in society, mainly Australia. It helps not only us, but it helps obviously the younger generation have value, teaching us about the surroundings, the plants, the animals, and what Australia and Australian beauty has to do with where we live. There's a lot of things that Australia has to be quite proud of and things that we need to look after in order to have that value for them in the future. And that's what Trust in Nature is basically doing. So they're also a very ethical and socially responsible company, which illustrates responsible leadership. It has achieved significant progress recently as it strives to be the safeguard in threatening wildlife, native plants, and also just looking after them, like I said, for our future generations. Trust in Nature pays great attention to conservation innovation, therefore trying to buy as much land as they can to conserve what we've got, and is also the leading company in 2018 in social responsibility within Australia. A few facts we've got here is that from 2016 to 2017, the organisation had weed control over the 9,900 hectares it owned. Also had federal control over 49,000 hectares, and then again over 13 hectares. So they've also been known to look after, keep, and bring back to health injured wildlife. This is not something that we were quite aware of until looking further into the story and really found Trust in Nature isn't just looking after the land, it's looking after what's on the land, and that's quite important. We then move on to the business model. So a business model is basically a plan for the successful operations of a business. It identifies sources, revenue, and obviously intends to keep the customer base, products and details, basically to show the model of financing and how it works within the business. So Trust in Nature works with traditional owners. They have this thing called a revolving fund. So Jonathan and Susan, the owners, the Haymans, in other words, they have conservation properties in central Victoria. Now, this fund has actually allowed them to purchase 63 properties and sold over what I believe is 57. And these are protected by 6,852 hectares of conservational land. Conservative land, sorry. The government, they are also backed up and funded by government programs. They have 126 management plans for properties that they own, and also have 34 new convent registries, which means that they have access to more land and more land around them, which definitely benefits them in the long run when it comes to trying to get everything sorted and settled and having that legal paperwork to show that no one can actually touch what's on that land. Talking about the revolving fund, Jonathan and Susan have obviously organized this in order to keep their business going. So the Hammans purchased this property from through Trust in Natures, and this fund helps them buy land with high conservation value. Sorry. Then they match this to the buyer who will take care of it. So obviously there's a lot of legal work to obtain here, but this procedure lets the funds be returned to the purchase price, and therefore they are able to purchase more properties. So since this, they've purchased, as I mentioned, a few statistics before, but 63 properties, sold 57, and also are now protected, as I mentioned again, by the 6,852 hectares of land. Finally, to finish off my bit of the presentation, we'll be looking at the business model. And this is right from Trust in Nature's financial statement. So as you can see here, most of their revenue or their income is come from government funded programs. So government grants, obviously part of their funding that they get from Trust in Nature. A lot of the other that you can see is operational grants. Now, operational grants are things like fundraisers, charities, and also go onto their website. You can just donate right on there. So if they are trying to get people to put in donations, their operations team is, constantly working on trying to get that on board. Finally, we've got, others like donations just from the public and investments. Anyway, thank you very much for listening to my bit of the presentation today. I'll take you further on and we'll follow through. Thank you very much.
Different from other leadership theory and style, responsible leadership focuses on the values-based and through ethical principles-driven relationship between leaders and stakeholders, who are connected through a shared sense of meaning and purpose through which they rise one another to a higher level of motivation and commitment for achieving sustainable values creation and social change. Therefore, the core idea of responsible leadership is sustainable values creation and social change. Broadly speaking, responsible leadership rests on taking decisions on the basis of consideration of the impact on all stakeholders to assure that sustainable value is created and that the outcomes are fair. Therefore, the responsible leadership can lead to the stakeholders' CSR perspective of leaders and can reflect leaders' willingness to engage in citizenship behavior that benefit both the organization and wider society. Trust for Nature protects native plants and wildlife in Victoria by conserving habitat on private land. It has very positive influence on the environment and wide society in Australia, which can illustrate its responsible leadership. It has achieved significant progress recently, as it strives to safeguard threatened wildlife and native plants for future generations. Trust for Nature pays great attention on conservation, innovation, and leadership. There are some outstanding facts can show their responsible leadership in the field of native plants and wildlife protection. For example, from 2016 to 17, the organization had bid control over 9,900 hectares, had feral predator control over 49,000 hectares, as well as had feral herbivore control over 13,000 hectares. Although the organization has great contribution on environment protection and demonstrate its responsible leadership, there are still some challenges they are facing. Firstly, lack of funds become a common issue for non-governmental organizations, such as Trust for Nature. It has expressed difficulty in finding sufficient, appropriate, and continuous funding for their work and for more responsible leadership. Secondly, the organization recognizes that it may have limited technical and organizational capacity. Weak capacity was identified in fundraising, government's technical area of development, and leadership and management. Thirdly, poor networking is another challenge for the organization. The lack of sufficient networking with the community and the government may result in the problems of duplication of efforts, conflicting strategies at community level, and the lack of learning from experience from other non-governmental organizations.
Challenges that Trust for Nature have been trying to overcome with their practices is the rising CO2 levels in the atmosphere. Their daily approaches are focused on this such that they can increase and strengthen terms with as many landowners to accept to agree with Trust for Nature and expand their overall land area that could be helpful in cutting down those CO2 levels. Moreover, raising awareness in the minds of all Australian citizens, especially people in Victoria, to make them understand the importance of the organizational practices and goals has been challenging for the organization ever since. Since collaboration is the key for the organization's Trust for Nature has been continuously working on getting more and more large landowners, similar organizations to join with Trust for Nature and work towards a better change as well as help the nature and its habitats sustain in our environment. Actions for Trust of Nature to work towards a sustainable future and achieve its organizational goals and targets include factors like raising concern for the importance of this organization to general public and motivate them to collaborate with the organization and create a better future for the present as well as the future generations to sustain and fight against the rising CO2 levels. As all employees, trustees, and volunteers working for the organization are inclined towards the organization's missions and values, it is important for them to also individually act as promoting entities for Trust for Nature to their personal as well as external collections. Also, make those connections aware of how important the organization is and its activities are focused to save the environment and its habitat. To conclude the presentation, we discuss how Trust for Nature as a responsible organization has been working towards a greater good for the environment and its habitat as well as the society in general. Also, how they have been impactful to the environment and in creating a better future are discussed. The firm's day-to-day activities along with their challenges and how they overcame those challenges are discussed as well as suggestions for the organization are also provided on raising awareness and working collaboratively as representatives of the firm.